Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon, everyone. I am Natasha Levy, and welcome to today's lunchtime live event where we're going to be talking about summer cyber safety tips. Got that? Summer cyber safety tips. And our guest today is Rahando Brown, and Rahando is a cybersecurity analyst here at Symptai Consulting Limited. Welcome, Rahando. How are you today?
I'm great, Natasha. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic, fantastic. So I know it's a little bit of a mouthful, summer cyber safety tips. So I think it would be useful for everyone that's watching if we started at the beginning. And so I would love for you to share with us some of the top cyber threats that you are seeing in the industry right now.
All right, no problem. All right, so I'm going to break down the threats into two, let's call it two categories, right? So we have the personal
Okay.
threats and we have the business threats, right? So on the personal side, we have things like identity theft, fraud, and what I like to call the ishings, right? So the ishings come in
Mm,
three varieties, right? So you have phishing, smishing, and vishing, right? I know it's a lot, but it is phishing, smishing, and vishing, and these
got
are what
it.
they are. So
Okay.
phishing is when everyone uses like Netflix and Amazon and Shein. So if it's a case where you get an email that says, "Hey, your purchase failed, but you know your purchase already went through and you probably already got the order," then this might be a phishing attack, right? And what the attackers do is that they try to send you an email from something that looks legitimate to say that, "Hey, this failed," and then the link that they send you will have a login. So when you log in now, you put in your email address and your password, then these attackers will now have that information in their database or whatever it is that they're using, and they can then try and log into your account, right? The next thing is smishing, right? And smishing is where I'm sure most of us in Jamaica have probably seen this before. You get a text message from like a banking institution or something else saying that, hey, your account has some lockout and you need to log in to
Mhm.
rectify it. And this text message will normally have a link in it, right? So when you click on
Mhm.
this link, just like with the phishing, it carries you to a fake website. And then when you're on the fake website, you put in your banking details, your username and password, and bam, the attackers now have access to your banking information, right? So you have
Okay.
to be very careful with these things. And the final one is phishing, which in Jamaica and the Caribbean, we more know it as the scam on it. So when
Okay.
the scammers are here, what they try to do that they try to call you sounding like somebody legitimate, whether it is from a banking institution or the most common one where persons are calling overseas and saying that they win the lotto or they win some other kind of raffle or draft and they have $1 million and have to send 5,000 US dollars to claim it, right? So these are the most common ones that happens on the personal side.
So you talked a lot about the three types of ishings, but you actually mentioned two before you started on the ishings. It was identity theft and there was another one. Could you
It
tell us
was
a little bit
fraud.
more? Right. So identity theft and fraud. Can you say a
Yep.
little bit more about those two?
Okay, so identity theft is where, so for example, the most common one is that if it is that you're somewhere and you have like a break-in into like your house or your vehicle and they steal your ID, what persons might do is that they'll use your ID to create a persona and then use this persona that has your name, your TR, and all this information to carry out malicious activities, right? And when they carry out these malicious activities, it would seem that it's happening or it seem that you are the person doing it. But in truth and in fact, you're probably just at work and you just get a call that one day that, hey, guess what? We saw your name pop up on something and you're under
And
investigation,
it's
right?
not you.
So,
Right.
yes, right? Fraud, on the other hand, now is pretty much where it's a case that it ties into identity theft and issues in a
Okay.
bit, where what they
Okay.
try to do is that they try and get your banking information, and then when they get
Mhm.
like the banking information, what they'll do is that they'll like make purchases online and stuff like that, right? So those are really the three main things that we kind of see happening in the space on the personal side.
Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna see if I can test myself on this.
Mhm.
So if I get an email from, what I assume to be my bank, for example, or a financial
Mhm.
institution, and it says something along the lines of, we need you to re-verify your information. Click below to continue the re-verification process. Um, that could be an example of phishing?
Yep. Once it's an
Got it.
email, it's tied to phishing.
Okay, got it, got it. And then if I get a text message now, a text message, and it says, something similar, probably a message from my Amazon account or something like that, saying something similar about my purchase, needing more additional information, click on the link. Once it's a text message, that's smishing, correct?
Yep, you're
All
100%
right.
correct.
I'm scoring. I'm doing well. I'm doing well. The
Just
identity
one
theft,
more.
well, right. Okay. So I get a phone call.
Mm-hmm.
And the person is, asking me to do something that involves, sharing personal information over the phone. That could be an example of phishing.
Yep, that's
Got it.
100%.
Okay, so 3 for 3. Great. All right. So that covers examples of personal cyber threats. Why don't you tell
Mhm.
us a little bit more now about company cyber threats?
All right, no problem. So on the business side, it's mainly two things, and I just added another one which kind of interlaps with the personal side, which with the phishing.
Okay.
However, the phishing on the business side is a bit more intricate and more professionally crafted, right? Especially with
Mm-hmm.
the use of these new AI technologies. Normally all of us know about Chat GPT, but
Mm-hmm.
recently in the space we've seen two that has come up for like more malicious purposes, which is called Fraud GPT and
Wow.
Worm GPT, right?
Now I'm
So
going to
they're
write this down. Fraud and worm GBT.
Yep.
Okay.
So what these do is that they use the same algorithm and machine learning that ChatGPT uses, but they
Uh-huh.
use it to write professional emails so that when they send you emails, you're more likely to click on it because it looks realistic, right?
Wow.
And what happens now with the other two is that we have ransomware and business email compromise, right?
Okay.
So phishing is normally the main vector that is used to then target people for ransomware and business email compromise. So how
Mm-hmm.
this works is that they send you a crafted phishing email, and there you are. You get the email, you see a link, you click on the link, and then something happens in the back end, and your machine gets compromised, right? So now what they'll do in the ransomware situation is that they can then have what they call like a dropper or a payload, and when this is on your machine, right, it then executes, and then your machine becomes infected, right? And then on the
Mm-hmm.
ransomware side, there are two types that are more common, which is the crypto ransomware and locker ransomwares, right? So the
Mm-hmm.
crypto ransomware is when they request cryptocurrency as a payment for you to unlock or get back access to your machine. And then the locker ransomware, on the other hand, is where they just pretty much lock you out of the machine entirely. So you can't do anything at all, right? And then on the business email compromise side now, follows the same premise. They send you the phishing email. After the phishing email, you click on a link, and most times, let's say for this conversation, you're using like Microsoft Office. You click on a link, it shows you the Microsoft login page, and while you're on that login page, it gives you the regular page that you're used to, right? So put in your username, which is your email address, and your password to log into your Office apps. When you log in, it redirects you to the actual login page. So you're like, oh, probably just put in something wrong. But in truth and
Mm-hmm.
in fact, you just send those credentials to the attacker. And what they do then is to log in to your actual Office 365 instance, sit in your email box. And when I say sit, I mean they pretty much stay hidden and just wait. So they're just watching the communication, right? So, and business email compromise mostly happens when there's like monetary value involved, right? So let's say that is just me and you, Natasha, right? So you're
Okay.
talking to me, you're the finance person, and I'm a vendor, right? So I'm talking
Yeah.
to you, and I'm expecting that you are going to send me like a invoice with like the banking information of where no, let's do the other way, right? So I'm going to
Okay.
send you right an invoice with the banking information and what you should send the money to, right? So what attackers will do is that they'll sit there, they look at how we communicate on a day-to-day basis, and then when I send you that document, that PDF document or whatever it is with that banking information, they're going to intercept the message, which means that they're going to stop it in its tracks from going to you, right? And then they're going to edit the PDF or put in their own PDF and then
Right.
send it to you now, making it seem that it's coming from me, right? So now that you get this PDF with all this attacker's information for banking details, you send off the money of however amount it is because these are pretty large sums, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
corporations are normally doing business with vendors, 25,000 US dollars or more sometimes. You send this off, and then afterwards, a day later, the real person comes back to you and give you a call. Hey, I didn't receive
Where's
it.
the payment? Yeah.
What's happening? Right? And then you're going to start being like, well, but I sent it off. And then you start investigating and you realize that, hey, the message was intercepted and it was sent to the wrong account. So in this case, now you'd have to get your bank and law enforcement involved because it's really something that is serious, especially if it's going to like a different country, which it happens to go to most times.
That was a lot to process. That was a lot to process. So on the corporate side, on the business side, the things, and I'm sure this was not an exhaustive list, right? These are just some of the main ones that we're seeing, but I'm sure there's a lot more out there. So you spoke about ransomware attacks, then you spoke about business email compromise, and then you spoke about the corporate or the business side of the ishings. And then what you said is that if I understood correctly, the way in which a lot of these threat actors will try and get into your company is by using some variation of phishing to get access to your systems. Okay, a lot to digest, but I think we actually have a slide that we can show that really brings home the point about what cyber threats look like in this region. So if we could cue that up. So here we are. And this is from a 2023 report that was undertaken. And this to me was quite frightening when I saw it, Rolando. So it says here that for the Latin America and Caribbean region, there were 535 incidents recorded. 535 incidents. That's quite a lot. I know that in the Caribbean, we tend to think that we're small nation states and that cyber threats and cyber attacks really are focused on larger countries or companies within larger companies. But this is showing that the Latin American Caribbean region is not immune to cyber threats, not immune to cyber attacks. 535 incidents with 65 confirmed data disclosure. And by that, I understand to mean that in this instance, the data was actually released, right? So that a cyber attack happened and the threat actors actually released the information. Something that was really just really outstanding when I saw this was that 74% of the breaches involved human error. Can you say a little bit more about what that human error piece is? And is that actually linked to the phishing that you spoke about a few moments ago?
Yes, it is, right? So the human error piece is really and truly, as a business, right? We can put in all the fancy technology, all the latest algorithms and artificial intelligence to help protect us. But if we don't have users that are trained to detect and not click on links, then so what happens with these detection algorithms is that they look for signatures and things that are known. So if one somehow gets past all this fancy system that you have and a user clicks on it, then that can lead to compromise, right? So without giving too much, because this part is coming up a bit later.
Yes, it is.
What we have is training, right? So user training is what would be very good to help prevent that.
Got it. All right. Thank you so much for that slide. So I think that's a perfect segue. So you've set the scene for us, Rolando. You've told us, listen, here's an overview of some of the threats that you need to be aware of from a personal perspective and also from a corporate or a company perspective. We've just seen some stats that really brought it home to us that we're not speaking theory. This is actually happening right now. And that data that we just showed, applied to attacks that happened in countries like Jamaica, Trinidad, Belize, Martinique, and Costa Rica, to name a few. So this notion that, we're too small and they're going to ignore us, really, we need to start paying attention to cybersecurity. So in paying attention to cybersecurity, Rolando, how can you protect yourself from cyber attacks? Why don't you talk to us a little bit now about on the personal side? How can you protect yourself from cyber attacks, and then maybe give us some information in terms of, from a corporate perspective, how can you protect yourself?
All right, no problem. All right, so on the personal side, so these tips tend to overlap a bit because really and truly, if you have good personal safety and personal security in terms of the actions that you carry out, then by default you carry it over to the business. But if you start out and you're not really so sure about it on the personal side, it might be a bit more difficult. You might probably do it in your organization because you're mandated to by policies and stuff, but you might not do it on the personal side, right? So the first things that we have on the personal side is multi-factor authentication, or MFA for short, right? So what
Okay.
this is that it is a type of additional code that we'd use in addition to our username and password. And what this does is that we you put in a username and password, and then there are three of the more common methods that you might use, that you might see, which
Mm-hmm.
are text message. So you get a text message to your phone, and then the
Okay.
text message might be, okay, this is your code. You might get a phone call, which, an automated voice on the other line is telling you what the code is, or you have an authentication app such as Google Authenticator or Microsoft Authenticator that is then giving you that code that is refreshing constantly, right?
Got
So what
it.
it does is that even if you did put in your username and password and attacker got it, then they're not able to log into your account because then they need this additional method of verification, right? So without this additional method of verification, then they can't log into the account, right?
Okay.
The next one that we have is strong passwords, right? So person should be using the more common password that we're used to. You have to start thinking about using strong passwords, right? And if it is that you're trying to use a password that you can remember, then using a passphrase is generally the best approach, right? So, for example, I'm sitting in a room, I see a window, right? I can say there's a window in a room that I am in, exclamation mark 123, right? And then that can be a secure password, right? All you have to do is change up some of the letters within it, right? So if it's an I, you can use a one or exclamation mark. If it's an E, you can use like a three, little things like that, and you can put other
Mhm.
variations in between that can help you to get a strong password, right? Um, and then on this topic as well, you can use a password generator, right? Such as like LastPass or any other thing that you might have where even a password manager, right? So most password managers have built-in password generators, and these tend to create more complex passwords that are pretty difficult to remember, even from our side where we are used to keeping passwords and tracking passwords. So a password manager, it helps you to keep track of all these passwords. So once you're using something like that, you're less likely to be using the same passwords again. All right. And the next point that I would have is don't reuse passwords, right? So you can't have the same password on your Instagram, your Snapchat, your TikTok, and you're going to use that same password on your banking information. No, because social media can be a targeted platform. We've seen Facebook data breaches that have happened before, right? And then what attackers can do is that they can find these leaked passwords on like a breach site or some leaked database on the dark web, and what they would do is just try and use the same email address or username to then try and log in. And if you're using the same password on all of these, then guess what? They can log into your banking information as well. And we don't want that to be the case, right? So the next thing that we can have is don't click on any links that you are not aware of.
I feel like we just covered this.
Exactly, right? So if it is that I have sent you if it is that I have sent you something and you're there and you're looking at something, right? So I sent you a link or someone else sent you a link, and with that link, you're there. You're not expecting it from somebody, you're not expecting your bank to be sending you anything, right? You're not expecting Amazon to be sending you anything.
Mhm.
Then what happens is that you get this link, you click on it, and you can get compromised, right? So you always want to ensure that you don't click on any links, right? And some things that we can look at, especially from the phishing side, is like the sender email address. So we look at the sender's
Mhm.
email address, and while you're seeing the sender's email address, if it says that it's from rohandabrown at google.com, right? Or it should be from rohandabrown at gmail.com, right? And you see Rohanda brown at gmail.com or Rohanda bro without the N at
Mhm.
gmail.com. These are indicators of what can be the case of a phishing attack that is imminent, right? Then something that the attackers will try to do is that they give you a call to action or urgency, right? So the call to action
Mhm.
is that, hey, your password has expired on your Netflix account, you need to change it now. Or hey, there was a weird transaction in your bank account and you need to check, or you need to log in to check it now. So these call to urgencies and giving you a time frame. So telling you that you have to do it within 15 minutes or 5 minutes, or it's going to go out, or you're going to get locked out of your account. These are some of the things, or flags as we like to call it, that you should look for. But those
So
would be
unfortunately, I think I know if I look in my email inbox now, I can see, I've seen some of these in terms of, links from people or entities that I'm not aware of. Before we move on to suggestions for company safety, I have a question for you. Would you
Sure.
consider password 123 a strong password, Rahando?
Nope. Nope, nope, nope. And to be honest, as a cyber analyst, we tend to look at different word lists, as we call them, that attackers use when they're trying to like break passwords or crack passwords.
Yeah.
And almost all the variations of password that you can think of. So P@SSWORD, password 123, PA, $, WORD, all these different variations are at the top of the word list. So if you're using any variation of passwords, it's best you go and change it now. Don't even wait until when this live is finished. Just go and change it.
Go and change your password. Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So, we're talking about using multi-factor authentication from a personal perspective, using strong passwords, not reusing your passwords, and not clicking on any links that you are aware of. Just quickly touch on maybe 2 or 3 ways that companies can protect themselves, Rahando, because we're getting close to the end of the live, and I wanted to make sure that we get in as much information and as much suggestions as we can. So if you're a company, what are some of the things that they can do to protect themselves from cyber attacks?
All right. So I'm going to skip over the first 3, which is pretty much, I just talked about them on the personal side. As I said, the overlapped, which is multi-factor authentication, again, strong passwords, and don't reuse passwords, right?
Got
But something
it.
that companies can use now on like a more business side, which is from like policies, whether it's from Microsoft Azure or even just group policies from your domain level, is a password change policy. So you can have a policy in place where your password will get, or your users will have to change their passwords every 30 to 42 days, right? So every month they'll have to change their password, they have to use a password. And then within these policies now, what you can do as well is that you can ensure that there's a reuse history, right? So you can say that they can't use the last 25 passwords that they have used before. So what this does
Wow.
is that persons are not reusing passwords and that they're entitled to use a strong password before they can even create one. So password policies are very good to use on organizational side, right? And something that we kind of teased on a bit before, as I said, humans are the weakest link. They are they are the persons that can get the organization compromised even when the best things are in place. So security awareness training, right? You have to have training, whether it's quarterly, which is a good cadence, or every bi-yearly, stuff like that, that you have this training. And what this does is that it allows the users to be sensitized to different flags. I had mentioned the 3 before, which is the sender email address, the call to action, and the urgency. And these trainings will allow for users to be more sensitized. So once you're sensitized, then you're less likely to click on these things because you're aware of them, right? Something else that we can use on the business side is phishing simulations, right? And phishing simulations, what they do is that you send out pretty much a phishing attack, right? But you're doing it from within the business, and what this is doing is trying to test your users to see if they're aware of the different flags, right? And normally you'll send out phishing simulations after like a training period, or you'll send out the phishing simulation first, and then you offer training to users afterwards, right? So those are some of the good practices that we can use on the business side to protect yourself.
Got it. Okay, so we've talked about protection. Let's talk about recovery, Rahando, like really quickly. So if unfortunately a cyber attack happens to you or your company, is recovery possible? And, can you share maybe 2 ways or 3 ways in which you can go about, having some sort of recovery process in play?
Sure. So I'll just share like a few just quick tips on the personal side. So if it is that you realize that you are a part of anything, then changing your passwords is one. For the identity theft, reporting lost IDs and documents to law enforcement. If you think that your bank card was compromised, try and get to the bank and replace that card. And if it is that you have a device that might be infected, then wiping the devices or changing the devices based on the severity of compromise are good steps to take, right? On the business side now, then businesses should all have a business continuity plan, right? So if it is that it does happen, you have to know how the business is going to continue running, and a disaster recovery plan now. So this one is a bit more in depth. So disaster recovery plans come when you're, it might be like a natural disaster, a hurricane or something like that comes in place, and then one part of the business is like completely wiped out, right? So these technically or tend to have like, off-site backups of stuff, or hot sites and cold sites, as we like to call them, where the business can recover and get operations back and running, right? And then the last thing, which kind of is broken down into a few more points, is an incident response plan, right? So within the incident response plan, the business should have, so these are different phases of an incident response plan, and they are preparation, detection and analysis, containment, eradication and recovery, and then crisis communication, which is where the key decision makers will create like a war room. They start talking to all different persons, activating the different incident response policies, reaching out to persons. If personal data is involved, then they would reach out to lawyers, things like that. So that's crisis communication. And then finally, you have to have post-incident activity, or what we like to call lessons learned. And in this section is where you kind of run over the whole incident plan. You look at, what went wrong, why did the attack happen, and the different methods that you use to recover from it. And then what you'll do with the team is that you'll try and see if there's any more efficient method or way that you can carry out this response plan. And from carrying out this response plan now, then what it will do is that you learn how to do it more efficiently or faster. Or if it is that you have different detection mechanisms in place, then you'll know how to fine-tune the detection mechanisms that are in place to then be able to better detect the type of attack that was missed.
Wow, that really was a lot. But what that brought home to me is that it isn't the end of the world if unfortunately you or your company, happens to experience a cyber attack. You mentioned there having a solid business continuity plan. Also incorporating a disaster recovery plan when you speak about natural disasters, woven into that. And then you spoke about an incidents response plan, and then you kind of went in and broke that down. Containment, eradication, recovery, and crisis management were some of the components of that I heard. Wow. Okay, I know I've been saying it really is quite a vast topic. And we certainly, I think, just scratched the surface of it, just really, really looked at some of, gave you a nice little umbrella overview of some of the cyber threats that are out there. So as we come to the end of today's lunchtime live event, which was, of course, on summer cyber safety tips, I just want to point out to you that if you go to the Symptai website, we actually have quite a few resources on there where you can learn a lot more about how to be cyber safe. Even though the topic is called Summer Cyber Safety Tips, being cyber safe is something that you should strive to be throughout the entire year. It should be something that you're actively looking at doing from a personal level, as well as being cyber safe from a corporate level. So if you go to our website, that's www.symptai.com. You can have a look at some of the resources there. And of course, if you need an entity, a company, a consulting firm to walk with you in terms of cybersecurity, many different aspects of cybersecurity, then please reach out to us here at Symptai Consulting. Rahando, it was a great conversation. It was packed full of useful information. I took some notes here. If you are watching and you didn't have an opportunity to write down everything that was said, not to worry, the recording is going to be available for you. And if you check our social media, we are going to be putting some of the tips there as well. So on behalf of the lunchtime live event, I would like to thank you, Rahando, for sharing so freely, and it was really a great conversation that we had. And stay tuned, everybody. We have more lunchtime live episodes to come in the future, so watch this space. Thank you so much. I'm Natasha Levy, and have a great day. Bye, Rahando. Take care.
Bye, Natasha.